everyone. I think we'll wait just for 2 minutes, just to wait for everyone to come in. Or we should just start. Or we should just start. Guys, if you can't hear me, just let me know and I'll try to project my voice. Generally have a very low voice. So if you can't hear me, please just raise your hand, motion for me to kind of like raise my voice, and I'll do my best to yell into this mic. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the session led by Untitled Chapters, Empowering a Writing Community. My name is Asma Al-Jailani, and with me on this panel is Fatma Al-Bannai, Shahad Thani, Shama Al-Bastaki, and Afra Atij. And we're all part of Untitled Chapters as writers, poets, and generally artists. We'll be touching on, we'll be talking to you today about the power of community, about the creative challenges and inspirations. We'll be talking a little bit about publishing in the region, and then we'll be wrapping it up with a reading from each of the panelists. Towards the end, we'll also have some time for Q&A and some networking. Untitled Chapters, or Fusul Bila Anwan in Arabic, is a community of Emirati writers, writers of all ages from across the UAE, who share a passion for the written words in whatever language it comes in. We have over 50 members in Untitled Chapters, and we have published a collection of 2 volumes with their writings. Untitled Chapters was founded by Fatma Al-Bannai in 2012, and I think all of us here on this panel joined at different stages, and we grew together consistently with it. So I think I'm going to start with Fatma, since she brought us all together through this group. What motivated you to create this writing community?
Assalamu alaikum. Well, when I started Untitled Chapters, it was at the beginning of, communities starting up on social media, and through another platform, I found Shahad, who was literally the first Emirati woman writer that I know of. Usually in my circle of friends and family, no one really had the interest of writing. And when I joined like writers groups, I would be the only Emirati, period. Male, female, I would be the only Emirati. So I had this naivety as like, I'm just going to be the first Emirati writer. But then through social media, I found Shahad. And then it basically opened a gateway to many other talented Emirati women writers. So I wanted to create something that will bring them all together for the young writer who has not found sisters or people who share the same passion as they do, as I had, and then just to connect with other talented writers. So that was
It's very interesting. What was the vision that you had then? I mean, you shared that it was to bring them together, but has that vision evolved since you started it, or did you expect it to end up to become as it is today?
I mean, it grew at a magnitude and a speed that I did not expect, and the amount I did not expect to find this much talent as I did. Like, I knew there were talented people out there, and I've not imagined seeing the growth that many young writers have had throughout their journey since starting Untitled Chapters. I mean, we have a prime example like Shema, who has joined in very young, and seeing her grow into the writer she is today and the person she is today, I don't think I would have ever projected that kind of growth and that kind of, So I think, yeah, it did evolve, and for the better, of course.
Thank you. So I'm going to open it for the rest of the panelists here. Since joining Untitled Chapters, how has the community affected your writing and your craft? Shahad, why don't I start with you?
I feel like I've always been part of communities online, internationally, locally, but since joining Untitled Chapters, I've realized like there is no community like Untitled Chapters, like specifically, because we are a family, first and foremost, like kindred spirits, and like I've always found like in my home, like the older the older sibling would read to the younger, and we kind of carried that into it. Like we're always mentoring the younger writers. We're always trying to be the person we needed when we were young and awkward and outcast. Like we've all known how it feels to be in a class writing, probably during one of the classes, and like, what are you doing? And it's like, I'm writing. Oh, you're such a nerd. And I know that feeling, the feeling of being a little bit outcast, a little bit different. And I'm glad that here today, like, we are a community, and we also connect with other communities who have built us up, who have brought in so much into us. And like JAF Inc., Sale Publishing, so many communities that we've connected with and consider our best friends. So I feel like even as a writer, I've mentored, I've connected, and I've grown up with the writers.
That's great. And Shamma, for you, you're a star member, I think, because you were young when you joined us. And we saw how you grew, and you're exploring different ways to project your art. So tell me how your journey has been with Untitled Chapters.
You know, for me, the answer is quite simple. It's just one word: confidence. Knowing that I have a backbone, a community, a movement that I belong to, which is Untitled Chapters, has, imbued my writing with so much confidence that it's really improved exponentially since I joined when I was a young, shy 15-year-old. And I'm really, really grateful to have grown with Untitled Chapters and to have witnessed its growth. And it's really a back and forth give and take. And, throughout history, poets or writers always belong to specific movement or belong to specific groups. You think of the Oulipo poets in France or the Misty poets, and I like to think of Untitled Chapters as one of those movements in the UAE. So it's really been an honor.
Perfect. And Afra, our spoken word
Yes.
poet.
I would just like to point out that we're still awkward. Like it hasn't changed, but I think I was having a conversation with my friend Alice the other day, and she said that I was talking about fitting in and finding your place, and she said, one of her favorite writers says that to fit in is the opposite of to belong. And I think that's an important distinction to make, because I think at Untitled Chapters we belong. We all write in different genres, we all have different interests, we all write in different languages, and we all express ourselves in different ways, but at the end of the day, we are a family. We fight like a family. We love each other like a family. We've been through, births and funerals and sicknesses and marriages, and we've gone through that journey together. So I think as people, we've grown together, and I think that's what has also helped a lot with the writers, especially the younger ones, like doing what I do, poetry. So many of them now are taking their voices to the stage, they're performing, and like I couldn't be prouder. So I think it is the anchor that you get with a family.
Completely agree. Just touching on what Shahad was saying earlier, it's important that a creative person would join a community, but then in the case of how we function as a community, we also work with other communities. So we mentioned JAF Inc., for example. Why is that important for a community to support other communities as well and to kind of collaborate? What do you, and I know the answer to this, but I want to hear it from you guys.
I feel like each community has something specific to offer, and it's important to be as part of many communities as possible in order to grow. Like, we get writers asking us where to go when they write articles, and we push them towards Sikka or Sale, and we help them find their voices. And in case of JAF Inc., and it's a lot of chemistry with us in JAF Inc., and we do writing workshops and prompts, and I guess it's because when it comes to people who care about literature and writing, we spark one another. And if we stayed closed in on one another, we wouldn't grow.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And then I'll just ask you, Fatma. So, in running this community, what have you learned so far since starting in 2012? What are the bumps on the road?
Well, it's a lot harder than people might think, especially if you really want to do, a real difference. It's not just about managing an Instagram account or a Twitter account. That is, I wouldn't say the easy part, because social media is a monster on its own. But if you really want to make an impact, the time, the effort, all of these things really have contributed into that. Also, I've gained a lot of knowledge about different genres, like I said, different writing styles, like my other sisters have touched upon. Writers, learn from other writers, because, even if we've been doing it for so long, or maybe we're like the panel of Untitled Chapters, it doesn't mean that we've reached, a level where, okay, now we get to mentor the kids, because even with the kids, we learn from them. So I think that's a really important thing to aspect. Even writers who have been published, have 40 books already on the shelves, are bestsellers, they themselves don't stop learning and don't stop developing. So I think that's a real key element in learning about Untitled Chapters.
It's like every event is a new event for us, right? It's like you learn as you go, and you keep learning as you go. No, in terms of like challenges.
I mean, the first year or so, validation wasn't quite there until we were able to establish ourselves. People weren't really taking us seriously because we were an online thing. We weren't kind of a publishing house, so that was quite a challenge. And then I think right now we don't, and then people are keep saying, okay, why is it in English, or why is so and so in Arabic, or why is it this and why is it that? And I think, or why aren't you published, or to that extent? And I think Untitled Chapters have, I think, reached a point where I think we can validate. I mean, what we've done over the last 8 years can speak with it for itself. And I mean, challenges are in anything that anyone starts, whether it's a online community or a restaurant or a book, just even writing a book. So, I mean, we grow, we learn, and we do that.
So other than challenges of running a community, again, I'll open it to all the writers here. What are the challenges you face as writers? So maybe...
Let's start the other way around. How much time?
Do you want to start with that?
Okay, let's start with me. I think there's a very specific list of challenges that that writers face. It's, first of all, taking that step to actually take an idea and put it on paper. Another challenge is really putting yourself and your soul into those words and onto that paper, and sitting there in the fear of wondering how it's going to be received. Well, I think we've all been there. What are people going to think? How are you going to put it out there? And there's a lot of stigma, I would say, to being a writer, especially like being a woman Emirati writer. There's a lot of issues that you face because people don't understand what you do, and if you write something that's fiction, they think it's based on your life, and there's very specific challenges. But I feel like mine are more because I live my life on the stage and I take my poetry out there. My challenges that I faced in the beginning were people not, I don't want to say appreciating because they appreciated what I do, but really not being accustomed to what it is that I do. And so they assumed that it was weird, and if it's weird, it's therefore bad. And so that was a very specific challenge to me, and I think you just have to persevere through it. I don't actually think that answers the question.
No, it does. You just sparked an incident, and we spoke about this earlier, right? So whenever we talk about, whenever we identify ourselves as, oh, we're writers, people generally ask, how is your family okay with it? And sometimes, again, for us, we're lucky because we do have our family support, but then we do know of instances where some Emirati women don't have family support. So again, that's the challenge of demystifying that stigma, or like deconstructing that stigma and just saying no. women have always been, Arab women specifically have always been in literature, have always been producing literature. It's not a strange thing. It's not a new thing. So
It's not strange, and it's definitely not new. But I would say, like with 100% conviction, I would say that we have had members who've told us that their parents don't let them write, and their families are not supportive of them, and we've had some very, very tragic encounters with that. But one of the things we do with Untitled Chapters is we do encourage parents and sisters and siblings and families to come and see what we do and to come and support their daughters through their writing. And I feel like for every person that doesn't have a family that supports them, I would tell them that we are that family. We are that family, and we will continue to be that family, because that's what we do. That's the magic of what we do.
that's beautiful.
Yeah. I echo Afra and Asma's words, and I think that, because we're a community, there's strength in numbers, and people kind of see this group of Emirati women just flourishing in their own fields and in their own writings, and they take inspiration from that, or they come talk to us and we have a dialogue. And one other challenge I like to think about is maybe slightly related, but also on the opposite end of the spectrum, which is grappling with people's expectations of what they expect, a group of women Emirati writers who are all bound by, a specific national or, in quotations, cultural identity. Just one of the challenges we have to face is telling people that we are not token writers. We don't all write the same thing. We don't represent a specific idea. We're all very individual, and we have different, approaches and styles, and it's that sensitivity to nuance that I think our group really brings to the table, and that we would really like to emphasize.
That's spot on. Shahad?
I feel like because we are so diverse, like we have our bring your own book to book club, because as a group we can't even agree on a book. So every time we go to the bookstore, Kinokuniya, we all disappear. Like we meet by the cash register. So Afra's in political science and nonfiction. We're in romance or poetry, or Asma's in fantasy, and Shamma's in poetry, and like we're all in different aisles, and like we get lost. And that's the thing, but we still love books, we still love to talk about it, we still love to write, even if we're very different. And I feel like that diversity in itself has shaped us as writers, because even when I perform, I feel like there's a little Afra, there's a little Asma, there's a little Shamma, and so many of the writers who have passed us and we've met and we've connected with. And that's the beauty of it, that it's fluid, it'll never change. We'll just grow with it.
I just want to bring back, in terms of challenges to me personally, for me, I used to shy away from the genre that I am passionate about writing, which is the romance writer, which is sometimes historical romance with fantasy. And now I'm proud to say that. With that comes the stigma of, oh, is she writing about her own life? Is there a love story? Is this character her? Or is this guy who she's writing about someone she's met, or forbidden love, or whatever? I've written 3 novels. My first novel that I've written was about literally Mother Nature collapsing upon ourselves, and a few hundred people are now living on a spaceship. Trust me, not everything we write is about real life. So, I mean, that's also a stigma in terms of women writing romance, not only Emirati writers, even other writers internationally criticize women international romance writers, saying that they're only writing about their fantasies. And yet, when someone like Nicholas Sparks finishes a book, he gets a book deal even before the book comes out. So I think that's also a challenge as women writers. I'm sure also, I mean, I'm just going to touch upon what Afra said, that, there are some things that people are not used to seeing. Like, they're used to seeing men on stage reciting poetry, and yet when a woman does it, the first question she's asked is, what does your family think about that? And you never hear it being asked towards a guy. So I think, and historically, if you see the older generation, the ones that are in their 60s and 70s, they always used to recite poetry. I don't know where in the time frame that it became unheard of or not the norm, but I think that's one of the challenges that we also want to break, is that this is not something to shy away from. There's nothing wrong with writing romance. There's nothing wrong with writing fantasy. There's nothing wrong with being on stage reciting poetry. So I think that's the main challenge that people, we've all faced as a group.
I've gone through that as a romance writer. I used to write a serialized blog novel, and I would put out a chapter every Friday, and people would tune in. And every day I had people saying, "Oh wow, we love it, but what are you teaching the younger generation?" And I'm like, it's a story and it's a reflection of reality, and I would hope that when you write something cathartic that people connect with, that people maybe learn from, and if they don't learn from it, they learn that humans are not perfect. And this idealization in literature is not something we should strive for, because ideal characters are boring characters. And but I've had those that, "Oh, you're writing something inappropriate, you shouldn't write it, and is this based on your life?"
You know what I find funny about that story is that there's a segment of people who read it, who enjoy it, and then quietly disapprove of it anyway, saying it's saib, or what are you teaching the next generation, which is hilarious.
But the thing is, those people who were saying it's saib were the same people DMing me and asking me for the links.
Exactly.
And there's also this weird fascination about which one of the characters is you. Like, my romance was about love. So I had the cousins who loved each other, but he has to marry his other cousin, and she was pining for him. And I had the illicit relationship, the boyfriend and girlfriend, the married couple who married via an arranged marriage, and they have no love for each other. And I kind of wanted to show the different parallels between all of them. And yet, people just saw one thing, one aspect, and it's a whole story. Or someone coming and asking, "Okay, but which one of these stories is you?" And it's like, and they'd get so disappointed if I tell them the truth that it's not actually based on my life. So I stopped saying it's based on, I just said, "Well, you guess, it's fine," and let them think about it.
Don't they still ask you though? Don't people still ask you which story is based on you?
Oh, I got asked out to breakfast and interrogated.
No, that's just funny. Well, we can talk about challenges, and it kind of touches on the diverse styles and writing preferences that we have, without talking about the challenges of publishing. Who wants to start?
Why are you looking at me?
No, I'm opening it up to the floor. So basically, I can speak for myself, where I've approached a couple of publishers a couple of years ago to pitch a collection of poetry that I've written over the span of 100 days. And the interest I received was ambiguous, where, it's interesting, however, we don't have the capacity for it right now, or where the standards are different, that I would have to co-sponsor it with the publishing house. So it varies a little bit. And at some point, I did approach a publishing house. They seemed interested, but then it came out. I came out with a deadline. Basically, there was no response, and I went ahead and self-published my book with myself, and I'm happy with that decision. Thanks.
And it's amazing.
But I want to ask each of you in terms of, because we have been writing, and I think that there's a hunger of not only to keep writing, but to distribute, to spread that writing as far and as wide as we can. What are some of the challenges that, whether here, that in the region that we faced, or
Who
are we
wants to
considering
start this
are we
one?
considering international publishing too?
I've dabbled with a bit of publishing, but I think there is that challenge with me where I get to that point that point of over perfectionism that I'm not ready to let go of my words yet. So that is my own personal obstacle. But in terms of, like, I did get a publishing offer, and what happened was the contract took too long, 3 months, and yet suddenly for some reason the book needed to go out in April, and the editor I got connected with was not the editor that
It wasn't the right fit.
it wasn't the right fit. As someone who writes contemporary romance, you want someone who's young, who understands your vision as a woman writer, giving out a message in an Emirati culture. And it doesn't even have to be an Emirati culture, just that universal message that you wanna convey. So that's where I was disappointed personally. And I do think about publishing, and I go back to honing my craft, basically.
I have to say, I mean, the UAE publishing industry has gone through, I mean, it has made great strides. We've had really great publishing houses come up, and the amount of encouragement to get Emiratis to publish their stories and everything has been amazing. I think the biggest thing with that, though, is I think there's a long way to be able to reach to the level that the international publishing industry is at right now. I mean, I write in English, so that's a whole different challenge altogether. Why are you writing in English? Why don't you write in Arabic? You know, the question is, أنتِ مو بمواطنة؟ ليش ما تكتبين بالعربي? And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's a valid question, and I would always say, I am very proud of my mother language. I carry it with me. I would make my children's mother language Arabic, but Arabic being my mother language does not necessarily translate into Arabic being my expressive and creative language. It's just that plain of simple. I express and be creative more in the English language. So for me, I looked at avenues to publish internationally because the stories I write are for an international audience. And when I did a lot of research, and one of the things that popped up in every single guideline was, how do you know that this publishing house is legit? Well, first you have to go through an agent. A literary agent will then talk to a publisher. Right now, the UAE doesn't have literary agents, and I'm hoping that, you know, we go into that path. And then for you to be able to know that this agent is legit and won't, you know, steal your work or steal anything, the number one thing that they would say, if this agent is not legit, is that if they ask money up front. If they ask money up front, that's a scam. And unfortunately, with the publishing industry here, they do ask money up front. So I mean, like I said before, it is no way criticizing, but I think there's a long way to go. I think for us to put out better content, things that are more on the international level, I think the level of agent, and then the publishers themselves. I mean, like I said, there are publishing houses that are doing amazing jobs. But there are others who don't put in as much effort to market their book because they've already had their payment. Internationally, publishing houses will do whatever it takes, all the marketing, all the distribution, everything, so that they be able to get back the money that they've invested in their author. So I think I'm hoping we're in that right path, that in a few years we'll be at that same level. And, you know, like, I mean, we're striving. More and more Emirati publishers are getting Emirati writers in the shelves, but I think we have a long way to go. We are not perfect, and we can only continue to grow and be better.
I mean, seeing the news we see every other day, right? That how, for example, right now the fees for ISBNs have is it ISBN? Yes, have been waived. So we're seeing kind of the steps to include Emirati publications and encourage publications to happen continuously. So you're right about that.
Yeah, no,
it is-
definitely.
it is-
Definitely.
it's-
I think it's in the right path.
Yeah.
I think we're doing an amazing job, and the publishing industry is booming, and we can only continue to grow from here.
Yeah. So Shada, I'm going to pivot to you. You spoke right now about your contemporary romance story, an Emirati kind of love story. And the first one took place over Dubai and France, and I think the second one took place between Dubai and Japan. So my question to you is, how did you get to choose? I mean, writing contemporary, obviously, starting from Dubai is a good start. But then, how did you decide to take your characters internationally as well?
I always feel like when you're in the culture, when you're in the country, you get a little bit limited. There's so many voices around you, your family, your uncles. You go out and it's like, be careful who you see and stuff like that. And I wanted my characters to be free from all these voices. So, and there is that little fantasy that people have where, oh, we'll travel and maybe we'll find love. We'll travel and maybe we'll meet someone. And this belief in destiny and serendipity. And so putting my characters outside of the UAE where they can be a little free and kind of not have voices in their head, and they can make their own decisions away from families where, oh, you're going to marry this person, or you're
It's a contrasting environment, right?
The contrasting environments. And I personally love Japan, and I find that it's kind of like my muse country, the muse country. Like where I go there, I feel like I think about Dubai, and I think about these characters that come from Dubai, and that's where it comes from.
And you used to put chapters of these novels on your blog on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So it's a serialization of chapters. What gave you that idea to do that, first of all? And then I'm going to follow it up with another question.
During 2012, it was the age of blog novels. And people in the Gulf were all writing blog novels, and I tune in to a few of them. But the thing that caught my eye was they'd write the story in English and the dialogue in chat language. And for me, as a writer, I thought about how interesting would it be for me to translate that culture, translate that dialogue, or make it universal enough that someone else could read it, not just lose interest by the time you get to the chat language. So that's where it started. It started as a dare. Oh, why don't you just put your writing online? And I put the first chapter, and people started asking, what comes next? And I went from there, and every Friday I put out a chapter about a certain character, and I'd make sure that each character is different from the other, just so people would start getting the sense of their characters, or who are they cheering for.
It's interesting because this is something that classic writers used to do, right? So Charles Dickens, his books didn't come out in one go. There were actually those chapters used to come out on a weekly basis as well.
Yeah, and he'd base the chapters on the feedback of the readers. And I do feel like writing a blog novel shaped me as a writer, because every person's opinion created me. Like, they've brought me closer to to that vision of what a novel should be.
So you did take their feedback into account, or is it that you gauged kind of their reaction that helped you shape
A
it?
little bit of both. Like like if someone's complaining about why is there a relationship that's not approved of in our culture, so I'd add the married couple, I'd add another parallel, and it was I think I was just having fun with it. It wasn't serious. But now that I got to the point where I have to sit down and take that blog novel into a grown-up novel, I get so taken back, and I have so much perfectionism. I need to write it for those readers who cheered me along.
Hopefully you'll get there. Hopefully, I'm sure you will.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Putting it up on a weekly basis, how did you find that process? Other than like getting the feedback and writing it down. I remember we used to chat on this all the time. So I get flashbacks on how it was, but thinking about it now, how was it?
I'd wake up 7 in the morning every Friday. It was my weekend. I'd wake up 7 in the morning, and I would write until 4 p.m. and I'd send it to you. I'd send it to Fatma. I'd get like one last edit and then publish it. And when I'd call you and ask, "Oh, Fatma, tell me everything about your wedding. Now, go."
As research, basically.
As research. And I had to research really fast. And I had to get so many interviews just to create that right tone. But I was free. Like, as much as I was busy, I was doing my master's. It was a new job, and I was doing a turning-in project, and yet I had so much time for this. So much time for this craft.
It's amazing how your brain kind of functions when you're under pressure, right? Following like the course, the master's class, and the projects and the work, and suddenly your mind just kind of lights up and just wants to write that story.
Yeah,
So that's amazing. Shamma, in your recent work, you combined your poetry with visual art, and you consider yourself a poet and a visual artist as well.
Sure.
So what inspired you to take such an approach, and will we see more of that from you?
Yeah, so I like to think that my work has always been pretty interdisciplinary. To give some context to the audience, so for the past about like a year and a half or 2 years, I've been working on this collection where, you flip through the pages and you'll find verses of poetry next to images collected from my family's archives that have been chopped up into kind of stanzaic blocks to mimic the poetic stanzas on the other page. And then you find kind of like text-image poetry where you'll find random text-image symbols forming different shapes. And it's, I guess, taking from the experimental tradition. But in this case, Asma, I wouldn't really, in this particular instance, I wouldn't really consider it a combination of two mediums of storytelling, which are poetry and visual art. Rather, I like to think of it as an expansion of one particular medium, which is poetry.
That's amazing.
Yes,
That's
and in fact, in the written piece that I have kind of contextualizing this work that I'm working on, I try to justify these images as poetry. And one thing I've been thinking a lot about is what makes a poem a poem? How do we define poetry? And so it's, and I think one reason I came to this was the desire to go beyond definitional concerns, if that makes sense. I'm so into genre fluidity. I'm so into, converging different ideas and themes and just breaking those genre barriers. And so it's been a fun project to work on.
That's great. And I can't wait to see what else you come up with. Afra, you did something...
Yes.
Why are you so serious?
I feel like, I don't know, you sounded really serious, and I thought you were going to ask me a really serious question.
No.
Like, I sat up and everything.
Well, it's kind of a serious... It is kind of a serious question, but
Yes.
also I admire you as I ask you this question. So you did
Tell
something
me more. No.
that not a lot of Emirati writers or poets do. which is quit your daytime job and pursue poetry, pursue spoken word as a full-time career. And my question is like, how has your journey been so far? And what advice would you give to anyone who wants to do that?
Okay, bismillah. Honestly, a lot of people thought I was crazy, and a lot of people told me to my face that you're giving up a job, it's a steady, cushy kind of job, you can go so far, you can do so much, and you're leaving all of that. And the people that didn't tell me that I was crazy told me, len mita. And strangely enough, I feel like that was the push that I needed to prove everyone wrong. And for people to tell me, how long are you going to do this? It's going to be a phase. أنتي بتردين تداومين بتردين تسوين. Okay, I know that at some point I am برد أداوم, but that doesn't change the fact of what happened. And it's been, alhamdulillah, it's been a really incredible journey. It's been, there were a lot of ups and downs, probably more downs than ups, but it's been incredible, and I wouldn't change it for anything. It's taken me all over the world. I'm in the home stretch of finishing my PhD dissertation, so that's a big milestone that I couldn't have done while I was working. I visited so many schools and so many, spoken to so many students. I've done different shows. I've met so many incredible people, and I feel like it's such a blessing to have been able to do what I do, but also to have, to walk into schools. I'm gonna try and not cry as I tell this story, but I walked into one of the schools, and they were like grade 7 to 9, and it was all boys, and they told me, you're gonna go talk to grade 7 to 9 and a group of 200 boys, and I thought, okay, what do I say? I don't know what I'm going to talk about, and I walked in, and one of them told me that he saw one of my poems on YouTube, and it's called A Good Punch, and it's about being bullied, and I don't like performing it a lot because it makes me cry, but it's about that realization that you're different, and that your difference is what makes you amazing. And he was like, you know what, if you can get through what you got through, then I can get through anything. And I thought to myself, this is such an incredible moment. It's such an incredible, powerful moment to know that you've created something that has that kind of an impact. And I don't think you can get that kind of an experience at a desk job. And I'm not saying that if you have a desk job, it's bad. I'm just saying that wasn't the place for me. But to be able to do that, to be able to talk to these kids and for them to say, you've made a difference in my life. I got a message a couple of months ago from a mother of one of the kids at one of the schools that I went to, and she said, before your talk at my daughter's school, she didn't talk to anybody. She didn't she didn't participate in anything, and she was, dealing with a lot of things, and she started writing poetry, and you gave her a voice. And I don't know who it was. I think I called Shahed, and I was like in tears about it, saying, I cannot believe this. I mean, to go from someone who was told that I would never be in school to being the person that's changing things, and to be able to take that journey. It's not stuff I could have done while I was working. So I feel incredibly blessed and incredibly privileged. And I complain about being unemployed a lot, but but honestly,
she also gloats about it.
I do gloat about it. Like I'm the one that they'll be up, at 8 o'clock in the morning at work, and I'm, be like, you guys, I'm going back to bed. But it's been an incredible journey to just be able to take that step and to be able to introduce people to what it is that I do.
Yeah. And I can say, like, from where I'm standing, that taking that step has opened you up creatively. Pursuing like your career as a spoken word artist has opened you up creatively from my perspective. I think you've pushed not only your voice, but you've inspired a lot of people. So
yeah, I've done a lot of things, a lot of it's been spoken word and the talks. I was recently working on a theater project, so I've been in different genres. I think that the next one is, I was joking with my mom the other day. I said, Mom, I'm going to start doing stand-up comedy, and I'm going to use the content in the family WhatsApp group. And she says, what? And I said, you guys are funny. Like, this is content that everyone relates to. And so I feel like I would have never been thinking about that before and thinking about using different things, different languages. When I did a poem for Louvre Abu Dhabi, I knew that I wanted to introduce my work in French, and so I learned French for it. So these are things that I would never would have done otherwise. And I would just like to point out that my biggest supporters through that journey and through all of the complaining and all of the mess that comes with it has been Untitled Chapters. Like, I can't tell you the number of times that Shama and I have spoken about creative things or just the stuff that's going on, and that you and I talk about that, and we talk about the dissertation, and Shahed lives 2 steps away, and I'm always, Shahed, عندكم أكل? Okay, I'm coming over, like, and we talk about poetry and what we do, and you know, Fatma and I have been in this since the beginning, so it's really, we are that family, and you've all been that family, and I feel like I would have never have been able to turn this journey into what I turned it into without all of Untitled Chapters and all the Untitled Chapters people that are here too.
So imagine that you're standing again in front of a class of students, and they're thinking of doing what you do. What advice would you give them?
I want to say something smart. Honestly, I would tell them to do it. I would tell them to not be afraid of their voice. And I would tell them that whatever they believe in is powerful, and nobody can take that away from them. Nobody can take away your voice. And nobody can take away your ability to say whatever it is that you need to say. And it doesn't have to be poetry. It can be through film. It can be through photography. It can be through public speaking. It can be through accounting. It can be through entrepreneurship. But the point is that you find your voice and you use it. And I think that's what's been missing from our classrooms. I feel really blessed to be able to bring that back.
That's great. I think I have one last question for Shamba. And this is based off a performance that you've done a few years ago. I think you've translated an Arabic poem by a Kuwaiti poet. Yes. Can't remember her name. But I remember it was an Arabic poem, and you translated it in English, and you performed it in English at the US Embassy. And I remember it being a very powerful performance. And you did it so well that I was wondering why other publishers who are translating, you know, from Arabic to English would employ someone like you and kind of do the same. Because I've read, for example, those bilingual books that translate Nizar Qabbani's books, for example, where I read the Arabic and I read the English, but the English does not do justice to what the Arabic does or says. Whereas the poem that you recited that day, it was very emotional. It expressed, I felt, the message very clearly. So I'm curious to know how you did that actually. Like, how were you able to look at this piece of work and choose the right word, making sure that the expression matched, making sure that the message was still intact?
Thanks for the question, Esma. So the poem I translated was by the Kuwaiti poet and economist, Dr. Suad al-Sabah. And she wrote the poem, and I think it's an old favorite, Veto ala noon al-niswa, which I translated to veto on the feminine noon, keeping noon, of course, as a bilingual pun. And, you know, the process was fairly simple. I just thought about what the core of her message was, you know, about women and voices, which is very much relevant to our panel today. And I wanted to, I guess, with this translation, and as with every translation, I think you need to think about not doing a direct translation, because that eventually kills whatever work you're killing, and you can never do the original work justice. But also preserve some of its essential qualities, like the structure of the poem, the rhyme scheme. I tried to stay authentic to Dr. Suad's rhyme scheme, except I did it in English. I tried to stay authentic to her kind of stanzaic breakdowns, the way she positioned the stanzas on the page. But then, of course, no translation is ever perfect. And although I try to mimic a lot of the emotionality and vigor that that I believe her poem possessed, when you translate something, it gives a work a new life or a different life. And I like to think of translation as a kind of retelling of a story. And so it might surprise you to know that this was actually just a quick assignment that I did for class in literary interpretation, a class called Literary Interpretation. But then I just kept working on it and molding it because I thought it had potential, and I was lucky enough to perform it at the U.S. Ambassador's house.
That was really several, and it was really beautiful when you performed it.
Thank you, I
so that was
appreciate
amazing.
it.
So I think before we wrap up and go and start doing our readings each, I'm going to open it to everyone again and just ask around. What are you currently working on? What project are you working on? So starting from Fatima.
For Untitled Chapters or for...
Yourself, Untitled Chapters.
I mean, for
with creative
Untitled
work.
Chapters, there is something in the works. I can't reveal too much right now so that I don't hype it up and then it dies down. But personally, for me, I am researching gemtology and looking into a historical fantasy novel that has all ethnicities, including Emirati, Middle Eastern, Asian, European, all of these things, and trying to combine all of them into a world of its own. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Cool. Shahad?
I'm currently working on a poetry book, which is a project I've had for a while. But I keep going back to it and editing it, but I think this time I'm pushing it out there. It's almost ready.
So just context for everyone. I deliberately put this question so that she can talk about it and self-prophesize
I'm a
this
procrastinator.
Project. Yes.
I'm a procrastinator / perfectionist, and
You don't let any of us procrastinate, though.
You can't keep polishing it, because if you polish something for too long, it's going to go into dust. Just
We'll work on it.
do
We'll
as
work
much
on it.
as you can, because as writers, we're never happy with what it is. Put it out there, otherwise it'll be just there. So حاسبوها بعدين إذا ما طلعته.
The project
I'm
will
working
come out.
on it. I'm working on it.
بعطيك deadline. I'll be your agent.
Shema.
So I talked about it a little bit earlier. I'm working on a collection called House to House, Beit LeBeit, which is a collection of ethnographic, photographic, and text image-based poetry in which I document, previously unheard oral narratives of the diverse communities around the Dubai Creek, including communities of Shindaga, Deira, and just around the Al Fahedi historical neighborhood around the creek area. So keep an eye out.
Hanafa?
Well, currently working on my dissertation. I'm hoping to get that done. I have no room to be a perfectionist on that. My professors gave me deadlines. So that's kind of the big thing that needs to get done. I'm working on something in theater as well, but that's again a conversation for another time. I think the big one is to get the dissertation done, because
Yeah.
I'm tired of telling people that I'm almost a doctor.
Yeah.
Like,
You'll get there.
Getting there.
You'll get there.
I'm throwing the question off to Asma, because
Yeah,
she's
Asma.
been moderating. What's new for you?
I'm currently working on a historical, supposedly, might be steampunk novel. Still in the research phases. I went into NaNoWriMo last year, had 8,000 words written down, and it's just a matter of combining research with those 8,000 words. So hopefully by the end of the year, knock on wood, we get a first draft done. Hopefully. And with that, I think I want to thank everyone who sat through our panel right now, and thank the panelists here. I think we're going to start with just 5 to 6 minutes of reading from each of us. Should we start from Fatma?
I think let's keep Afra for last.
Yes.
So I haven't done this in a long time. I think 5 years ago was the last time I done it. So bear with me. I'm not as experienced as Afra. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is something I've written. I based a lot of my writing on visual, like pictures or music. So I've seen this picture of green theater chairs, and usually theater chairs are red, they're not green. So this is for that. There is no title, it's just that. A single circle left forgotten, dance within like fairies, their movement enchanting. For they are the only movements in this place, a light at the center stage. A low sound of a click, a heeled shoe coming forward, the wooden boards moaning in protest at the disturbance of their old age. She stands in the middle. Crystal eyes survey the scene. Plush velvet chairs, once crimson red, are now enclosed in deep emerald. They still are crimson red, under all that green. Her hands rise, and she holds them in the air, stained fingers stretched to the heavens. She starts to sing, her melody vibrating against the wooden walls. The fairies danced with her hands as she bellowed louder, her last song, the ballad she sang, as her lover thrust a knife in her back, so very long ago. So that was one. I'll just do one more so I can give the ladies a couple of more time to read. This was something I've seen also, and it's just a beam of light. The room was pitch dark. The only source of light was a tiny square beam coming from the phone screen. She held her breath as she listened to his breathing next to her, her body completely still, as if the motion of breathing itself would wake him. He had his back to her and hers to his, as she carried out her acting scene of sleeping every night until she fell asleep, thinking that she was. Tonight she shifted to face him. She could make out the shadow of his features, even in darkness, for his face has been forever sketched in her mind. She could see his face in front of her, even at the deepest pits of darkness. Years ago, he penetrated her heart, showed her everything that love was, how special that a woman can be with a man's love, safe, secure, and passionate. He was her first. She was always a loner, and now she knows loneliness. And she never knew how painful being distant from someone, not physical, of course, because as tears cascade down her cheeks, she realized no one can truly know distance until they're sharing a bed with someone who is falling out of love with you. Thank you. I'm not bitter, by the way. My marriage is fine. Both of them are betraying and out of love, but we're okay.
I can't perform. Okay. No, I'm fine. Okay. This is actually something out of the poetry book in progress. I carry summers in my soul, rolling sand dunes that look like waves, sun that scorches, becoming molten in the horizons, beckoning our restless feet to leave footprints farther, wider, as far as the eyes can see. I am tea leaves curling in boiling water, embracing spices above a burning campfire, at dusk to make chai. I am ground coffee beans, rose water, saffron, and cardamom. Always cardamom, alongside the laughter of family, aunts, uncles, grandparents, telling tales of ancestors who dove the depths of the ocean, for pearl drivers who married daughters of merchants and nomads, who planted palm trees to create an oasis in a barren land. There are seasons on earth I will never meet. I'll never know blushing trees or snowflakes on window panes. I'll never know golden leaves crunching beneath my feet, but I yearn to explore with a fire that burns the blood. The restlessness within me longs for departure, a brief separation, only to come back to my haven of sand, palm trees, beaches, deserts, and skyscrapers. I carry summers in my soul, and I run barefoot on sand dunes, a traveler with legacy to defy the horizons. I am a color you have never lived in a city that gleams in the light. Okay. Just a little background on this one. I wrote it for the mothers in my life who often seem to call me, well, I don't actually know what to tell them, but I wanted just once to tell them, you know, mothers are so hard on themselves, and women in general are hard on themselves. They want to do it all, and, you know, so this one's for the moms. You lie awake at night, rocking in a sea of treacherous thoughts. Your baby cries with wants you no longer understand. Burrowing against your aching heart, he sleeps on your side of the bed, afraid of his father's shadow. You wonder if you sacrificed too much too soon. You used to think happily ever after meant you could do it all. You could be whatever you chose to be, the woman, the wife, the mother, the writer, the painter, the philosopher. You thought you could dream the dreams into dizzying heights. You forgot the miracles that only you can perform, the magic that only you can weave. Bringing a child into the world was an earthquake, except you were the only one who shook. You tremble with the ripple of rightness and responsibility, holding your child, your tangible hope, your comfort, your blessing. Against you, you thought you could be whatever you chose to be. Nobody told you that you would give up your own femininity, that you would forget the glory of your talents. Nobody told you that you would have to be the mother and father because daddy is too busy playing PlayStation with his friends, because the only time daddy carries your baby is to pose with him for a picture on Instagram, so everyone can see what a perfect father he is. When you are the one who should see, you are the witness to this life, and in your eyes you have the power to make loved ones grow. So rise. Rise and rise again until you learn the breadth of your own music. Rise as you learn to love yourself as deeply as you want to be loved. Learn to be selfish sometimes. Learn to be brave. Learn to cry sometimes. Rise and rise again. You are your own phoenix. Learn to become and unbecome. To dance over your own ashes like a ballerina. To smile, to laugh. Let the ice thaw off your bruised heart. Ignite and know the fiery heat of your burning passions. Ignite, for you can burn down a city with your own fire. And know that in burning a flame, there is healing. That in breaking, you can only be fixed. So rise into and onto yourself. Sink into the solace of your own being. It was never about him. Rise and rise again, tower with the strength of your roaring heart. This is your story. Hold the pen with courage, don't let your hand tremble. Tell your story fearlessly. You are the master of your own destiny. You have the magic wand. You can spin miracles. Finally, sing and rejoice, for you have always, always been beautiful. Okay. Last one. I wrote this in 2008, and I keep on editing it. And somehow something about it is universal. This is Cosmopolitan Man. He walks in labels like a peacock, the cosmopolitan man from UAE, with a stiff kandora rustling as he hurries, picking up his step to show his Gucci sandals, and the fact that he matched it with his brand new cap. He readjusted, just so you notice, trying not to smirk from behind Ray-Ban aviators. On his iPhone, glimpses of Snapchat. His phone rings, and he speaks into the AirPod, hooded gazes glancing at you ever so casual. I'm wanted, I'm special, but there's room for you too. He walks proudly, shoulders back, chest puffed up with his own importance, strutting like a Kanye who has yet to find his Kim. It could be you. He takes off his cap and runs a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair and gives a long, suffering sigh. You don't know what you're missing, he seems to say. And though his beauty does make a girl's heart pound. Long black lashes and perfectly trimmed beard. A salute to the modern Bedouin, but a reminder that he could have walked off the Louis Vuitton ad. And the lips that know all the lines to reel a woman in. There he goes with his soulful eyes. Oh, and here comes the pang of longing and the heavy knowledge that for all his beauty, he's just a shell of all that he could be. There are no longer heroes for the modern woman. Chivalry is dead, along with the dream of the knight on a white charger to rescue you from the dragons of the sage. Where is the hero? Where is the poet, the scholar, the wizard? And just who is this poor cosmopolitan woman supposed to hold out for? Thank you, everyone.
All right, so I'll be reading from my poetry book, Constellations of Home. This is something I published in 2017. And it's mostly a self-discovery kind of stream of conscious piece of work. And the prompt behind it is that I wasn't writing since 2014, before 2014, sorry, I wasn't writing consistently. And there was this crisis of identity where I want to be a writer, but I'm not writing, and what am I doing? And so a friend proposed an idea that, why don't we do a 100, and Shad actually joined me in this, why don't we do a 100 days of writing challenge and consistently post something on Instagram for 100 days. And the whole challenge accumulated into this little book here. So I'll start reading 3 short pieces, hopefully. Nature is in humans strolling with their masks in tow. Nature is in being a pretender. And I am a pretender. The good girl, the polite girl, the disciplined sister, the one of the boys, the one of those girls, the understanding friend, the patient daughter, the eager optimist, the terrified nerve-wrack, the eloquent writer, the word spinner, the cousin sister, the mature woman, the heartbroken lover, the daydreamer, the wide-eyed observer, the self-esteem chaos. Deconstruct me, and I am not but a pretender. I count in myself 1,000 faults, when there is only one, so little self-love. And the last one here. Heed the words of my roaring heart as it witnesses beautiful hands kneading creations of all forms. Callous fingers cut, bled, streaked red with tears, such scars mapping their wretched journey. And hear my roaring words as it witnesses genuine flops. True children of delusion, of no substance or honor, parade themselves with stale prestige. Their journey is all about one with the air. Thank you.
So I'm going to read an excerpt from the collection that I'm currently working on, which was recently published in the Asymptote Journal of Global Contemporary Literature online. So this one is called House to House, Beit LeBeit. A big rock of salt was crushed into tiny crystals. That's what we used to salt our foods. These rocks were sold in the old souk. But of course, they got them from the sea. We ate fish, a lot of fish, fried lumi, ruwaid spice, rice spiced for lunch, breakfast was eggs. There wasn't that much. There weren't that many options. Cheese ma cheese, no one chose really. No one had really. Cheese would spoil quick. Just a little we had. جبن ما جبن ما حد كان ياكل. شوي. قليل. My mother Maria and my aunt used to teach the Quran in the house. They were the teachers of the fridge, the mothers of the tongues. They used to have 30 to 40 students at a time, sometimes more, sometimes less. MashaAllah, our house was always filled with heads. Every day they would come, every day they would come. They all still remember her. Abdul Shakur was her student. And when he would see me anywhere, still even today, he always points at me like this and says, the mother of this one taught me everything. هذا علمتني كل شيء. They were all young kids, started when they were young kids, when they were young, wore flower garlands around their heads, and the girls wore lots of gold. Boys and girls, we all learned together, celebrated together. We walked from house to house in a group, a line. The first person would read, the rest would repeat. House to house, house to house, beit lebeit, beit lebeit. In Eid, we would go to the Tujjar's house. Beauta Tujjar. We would have breakfast there. Everyone gathered there. Some would come from Dera. And do you know what their breakfast was? Rice and meat. Rice and meat? Yes, rice and meat. 20 big plates or so, and haris too. Then what was their lunch? Also the same. Yom al-Eid lazim chi. But Eid day has to be like this. And so we went from house to house and house to house. Min beit lebeit, min beit lebeit. From house to house they go like this. And not one person, two persons. ما بنفر, نفرين, لا. 70 أو 80. No, 70 or 80 persons like this, all like the crowd of a football match. مثل المباراة. They gave us kids, of course. عيدية. They gave us عيدية. عيدية made us happy. صغارية عطوهم آنة, آنتين, ثلاث آنات. 1 ana, 2 ana, 3 anas. When I grew a little bigger, they gave me a rabbiya. And sometimes I went and exchanged it for 16 anas, so I could feel like I had more coins in my hands the night of Eid. We would pray Isha, then take the Abra to Dera, where the Dukkan was. And we opened the Dukkan from the evening until dawn. نصير نفتح الدكان لين قبل الفجر. There were no lamps. لا كهرباء ما كهرباء. We had this other thing, like a fanus. Like a fanus? No. Fener? No. Like gas? No. Candles? No. Wait. Let me find a picture on my phone. Ding, ding, dong, ding, twing, hush, rush, swift, foo. This. See this? We would connect this to this and this to this. And then they lit a flame inside, fire inside this. So this would transform into something like a globe, bulb, globe. Thank you.
Why are you staring at me?
You're our finale.
Sorry, I don't know how to do poetry sitting down. Ready? So, because we're talking about what we're talking about, I think this is a perfect poem to start with. I'm going to do too. So one of the first times I did poetry, I got off stage, and this lady comes up to me and she says, "Afra, I love what you do. اللي تسوينه وايد حلو بس aren't you worried that you're never going to get married?" And I thought, no. But anyway, so I wrote this poem about that. Ready? The only thing worse than finding 25, I kid you not, 25 missed calls from one of my parents is one of my parents telling me, "Afra, your cousin's getting married." And it's not that I'm opposed to weddings or marriages, it's just that instead of hearing the wedding zephyr, I hear my name on the auction block over and over again because it's not so much a wedding as it is a marriage. As soon as someone tells you that someone in your family is getting married, your life becomes a show on display. Touch the screen for more info. Double tap to like and approve. Scroll down to scrutinize my every move, and screenshot to mock me at your next gathering. These expectations of women and marriage have become shocking. If a girl is over 20 and unmarried, she's way past her expiry date. Afra, تراجبت عن سين وعلى فكرة nobody likes a crazy cat lady. Women get shamed and shunned by a society that keeps them caged at the wedding between Ahmed saying, فلانة بنت فلان قد married, فلانة بنت فلان قد divorced. Divorced, I can't believe it. And Nasser replies saying, تراهم كانوا يبون اختي حق ولدهم بس رفضت. أصلاً يقولون هالرجال مو بزين. I heard he's already been married twice. Gossip quickly spreads around the table like wildfire. Tongues like matches, words like gasoline. Obscene comments commence. Awash is wearing a lot of makeup. Nobody likes a girl whose makeup is too much. Hamda isn't wearing any makeup. Nobody likes a girl whose face isn't too much. Wafa wears glasses. She's still studying, obviously overeducated and overqualified, but nobody likes a girl who thinks too much. Ahmed stressed she gained 2 kilos and everyone noticed. Afra stressed she lost 25 kilos and no one noticed. I heard she had secret gastric bypass. No matter what a girl does, nothing can compare to the grandeur of marriage. والله كملتي PhD وصرتي دكتورة؟ متى بنفرح فيك؟ No husband? Why no husband? ما شاء الله صرتي مديرة؟ زين ما تبين تجيبين عيال. We spend so much time worrying about what other people are doing, pointless conversations about people. اسمحوا لي, I think I'll pass. مش علي أنا من الناس وش على الناس مني. Thank you. So, actually, somebody tried to tell me that that poem is the reason why I'm not married. I said, okay, yeah. What do we end with? What did we discussed this? I forgot what we decided. Sure. Huh? Okay. No, you're confusing me. I can't. I don't know. I know. Okay. Do you want something funny or do you want something a bit more serious? Funny? Okay. The crowd has spoken. So when I tell people that I'm a poet, the first thing they ask me is if I write love poems. And I tell them no, and then they're really disappointed. So I don't write love poems, but I've only written one love poem, and I'm going to share it with you. I think it's really special when you share something that means so much. So this is my love poem that I'm going to share with you. Okay, you ready? Dear food, I can't get enough of you. I love the way you melt every time you see me. I love the way you love me. I love the way you don't judge me after a long day at work and I don't want to talk. You know, just the right flavors to hit the spot. You make me want to leave everything that is sane and abandon all rationality. Dear food, you make me realize that my dream job is being a taste tester in the test kitchen of the Food Network. You make me want to get a pet dog so I can name him Ronald. Doesn't Ronald McDonald doesn't all have the McChicken with extra cheese? And please, don't skimp on the fries, dear food. You're the addiction I can't possibly deny, a spinning vortex of doom that makes me look forward to the ride, dear food. I know nobody's perfect, but dear food, I wish you didn't make me fat. Dear food, I tried on my jeans last night, but I couldn't close the zipper. I jumped up and down, but they only got tighter. I sucked in my gut. It did not work. Dear food, I think we should stop seeing each other. Dear food, we need to talk. Dear food, it's not you, it's me. Dear food, the models in the magazines are making me feel bad about myself. Dear food, forget the jeans, I think it's time to wear dresses. Dear food, I'm now seeing your effect on me. Dear food, they said I should try low-fat cheese on brown bread. I tried it once, but I couldn't get past the smell, so I put it down and ate a brownie instead. Dear food, you're my bestest best friend. You've seen me at my worst, but still greet me with open arms in the end. Dear food, 3 flights of stairs got the best of me today. Dear food, I still love you. Dear food, I could never love you, not at least as much as I love myself. Dear food, this is my last song. This is my golden goal after extra time. Dear food, I guess this is goodbye. Salamatkum. Thank you. Oh, just in case you're wondering, so the diet tried to break us up, but Food and I, we talked about it, and we got back together. We got the 12 kilos back, and we're really, really happy. So, just in case you were wondering.
Thank you, everyone, for making it to our panel this evening. Thank you for sticking around and listening to us. We'll be around here if you want to ask us any questions, if you just want to get more information about Untitled Chapters. Please feel free and just come up to us downstage here and just say hi. Does anyone
I'm
want
just
to
used to
add?
holding them. Like I'm like.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Anyway, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.